learning the Bible can be challenging for beginners. But by following some steps and methods, you can better understand and absorb its content. Let's start by learning some key vocabulary related to the Bible. Gospel means good news. In Christianity, it refers to the message about Jesus Christ's life, teachings, death, and resurrection. The 4 Gospels in the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, recount these events. Covenant, a formal agreement or promise between God and people. In the Old Testament, significant covenants were made with figures like Abraham and Moses. The New Testament introduces a new covenant through Jesus Christ. Prophet, a messenger chosen by God to deliver his messages and predictions. Prophets like Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel in the Old Testament conveyed God's will and future events. Baptism, a religious ritual involving water to symbolize purification and entry into the Christian faith. Jesus was baptized, and he instructed his followers to baptize others as well. Communion, a ceremony commemorating Jesus' Last Supper with his disciples. It involves eating bread and drinking wine to represent Jesus' body and blood, symbolizing unity with him. Repentance, feeling remorse for past wrongs and deciding to change one's behavior. In the Bible, repentance is essential for reconciling with God and turning away from sin. Israel refers to the people chosen by God, the descendants of Jacob, Israel. In the Old Testament, it signifies the 12 tribes. In the New Testament, it can refer to the broader community of believers. Kingdom of Heaven describes God's reign and the ideal state where his will is perfectly fulfilled. Jesus used this term to explain the nature of God's rule and the future state of righteousness. Law refers to the set of rules and commandments given by God to guide human behavior. The Mosaic Law in the Old Testament includes the 10 Commandments and other regulations. Redemption, the act of being saved from sin through Jesus Christ's sacrifice. Redemption represents God's grace and the restoration of the relationship between humanity and God. Here are 2 conversations about how to study the Bible. Hey Emily, I've been thinking about reading the Bible, but honestly, I find it really hard to understand. Do you have any tips? Oh, definitely. The Bible can be a bit overwhelming at first. One thing that helped me was taking it slow and reading 1 chapter at a time. If there's something you don't understand, you can look up explanations or videos online. There are plenty of resources that break down each chapter and make it easier to grasp. That sounds like a good idea. So, I shouldn't rush through it, just take my time? Exactly. And another thing that helped me was reading other historical books or stories alongside the Bible. It gives more context and makes the events and teachings easier to relate to. That makes sense. It's like when you study history and literature together. I guess I can give that a try. By the way, did you have to study the Bible in school like you do with subjects like math or science? Well, it depends on the type of school. In some private religious schools, Bible study is a part of the curriculum, just like any other subject. But in public schools, it's not usually part of the standard curriculum unless you're taking a specific course on religious studies. Oh, interesting. So, did you go to a private or public school? I went to a private school, so Bible study was part of my education there. That's why I've got some experience with it and can offer these tips. That's really helpful to know. It sounds like you have a lot of experience with this. Maybe we can discuss what I read sometime. Of course, I'd love that. We can help each other out. Enjoy your reading, Sarah. Thanks. I'm actually looking forward to it now. Hey Jordan, I've been diving into the Bible and I keep getting lost with all the different places and countries mentioned. How do you figure out which ones are good or bad? I get that. It can be quite confusing. In the Bible, different places and nations often symbolize different moral or spiritual conditions. For instance, Israel is usually depicted as the chosen people, but their relationship with God fluctuates between faithfulness and rebellion. Oh, I see. And what about places like Egypt or Babylon? How should I understand them? Egypt, for example, is typically seen as a place of oppression and danger for the Israelites because it's where they were enslaved before the Exodus. Babylon is often associated with exile and punishment, especially since it conquered Jerusalem and took many Israelites away. So it's more about what these nations represent in the story rather than their literal goodness or badness. Exactly. The Bible uses these places to illustrate bigger themes like faith, obedience, and justice. The nations themselves are often symbolic of broader moral or spiritual lessons. Got it. And what about the prophets? How should I approach their messages in different parts of the story? The prophets are like God's messengers, and their messages often reflect the state of Israel at the time. When things are going well, the prophets might speak about blessings and promises. But during tough times, they usually call for repentance and warn of consequences. Understanding the historical context can really help make sense of what they're saying. So, knowing the background of the story helps in understanding the prophet's messages. Exactly. Context is key. When the prophets warn about impending doom, it's often because the people have strayed from God's teachings. On the flip side, messages of hope and restoration usually come when there's a chance for renewal or repentance. That makes a lot of sense. It seems like understanding the history and context is crucial for grasping the overall message. Absolutely. And if you ever find yourself stuck, there are commentaries and resources that provide historical and cultural explanations. They can really clarify things. Thanks, Jordan. This is really helpful. I feel like I'm starting to get a better grasp on the stories and their meanings. You're welcome. I'm glad it's helping. Feel free to reach out anytime if you have more questions. We can always discuss it together. Great, I'll definitely keep that in mind. Thanks again. Okay, that's all for today's practicing. Bye for now.